Oh, you can say that. I think it's like just a hasty generalization, probably. The recording bot it, I guess.
It's not even a hasty generalization. It's just a generalization.
I'm trying to debate Sonic on infinitism.
All right, man. Debate infinitism.
Huh?
Yeah, we can debate infinitism right now.
Nigga, I'm debating Sonic.
Yeah, I'm Sonic.
He's gonna make the draw.
Anyways, Sonic. It's the standard critique that I gave to you last time. I just don't know under like an infinitist method of justification how do we have like closure of sound arguments.
That's powerful.
Fuck off, Jester. Anyways, the reason. Oh wait. I don't know what I was going to say why. But anyways, the reason why I think that is because, given the regress premises, which is outside of whatever interlocking epistemic access, it might, fall under or support another hypothesis better. Or, it might just not be inferential to the other proposition or the other propositions in the chain.
Yo, Hyde, did you know that self-applicable skepticism is self-defeating?
Shut your lame ass up, nigga.
Wait, so
just gave away his sauce.
Okay, yeah. So the regress problem. So, any given justification for any given proposition under infinitism, there's no assurance of soundness closure because there could be some other proposition in the infinitary chain that or some competing proposition, right? So some incompatible proposition that shows otherwise. So we're just asking how is soundness ensured under infinitism?
Yeah, I'm saying, there could be another underdetermined proposition within another regress chain of reasons that could conflict with the other one. So yeah, what do you mean by undetermined? Have closure for sound arguments under that view.
Wait. What do you mean by undetermined? There, do you mean the likelihood of obtaining is vague or something?
Let's say underdetermined just means, let's say there's proposition 1 and there's proposition 2, and there's just no evidence for proposition 1 or 2 having some overdetermination with each other. Just just take it as each proposition.
Wait, what do you mean? Wait, there's no evidence of
underdetermination, overdetermination.
Wait, there's no evidence of proposition 2 having some overdetermination on proposition 2 insofar as there's no reason to believe proposition 2 is more likely than proposition 1?
Yeah, they don't overdetermine each other, so there would be some.
Is what I said just bro? That was kind of a question. Is what I said accurately capturing what you just said there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, so first off, the infinite regress problem insofar as how do we ensure soundness under infinitism isn't how we ensure soundness is actually a concern under Klein's infinitist model. Klein takes it that in order for an agent to be disastrously justified in some given proposition, the agent has to have access to the justifier, and that alone would be considered disaster justification under Klein's infinitist model. So this is not really a concern for the infinitist view that I'm talking about here.
Okay, is that all?
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
And, to be clear, let's get clear on what you mean by doxastic justification here.
The justification is appropriately connected to the belief, and the belief is appropriately connected to the evidence accessible to the agent.
Yeah, but the problem is the evidence accessible to the agent is going to hinge on things that are not accessible to the agent.
Yeah, but that's irrelevant.
That would fall back on how true the other propositions are in the chain.
Wait, no, I just explained how that's irrelevant though. The quote unquote evidence accessible to the agent, right? There may be some inferential relationship between the proposition and the proposition and the justification the agent may have to some proposition outside the agent's epistemic access, and that potentially hindering its likelihood, or maybe there's some incompatible proposition that may show that the likelihood of this proposition being the case is very small or whatever. That's completely irrelevant under Klein's infinitist model, because all you need to be disastrously justified is you have to have access to some justifier in order to be disastrously justified. So you're talking about a concern, but the concern isn't really relevant to Klein's infinitist model.
Listen, I can grant that Klein has this sort of inquiry for doxastic doxastic justification for like the intuits, but the problem is, even if that's what he's talking about, right? His view like rules out or has some concerns with something people would take to be like some sort of epistemic not some sort of epistemic virtue or whatever it's called, but you know what I'm talking about, right? So obviously, even if that's not what he's
I'm
talking
a little bit
about,
confused.
stop.
Oh, okay.
Even if that's
I
not
don't know
what he's talking about, if it leaves some problem for soundness under the view, then you shouldn't take it seriously.
No. Well, so there's a couple of things. Like, one, the view has different concerns. So the view addresses a different kind of skeptical approach, right? Like, either there's some infinitary chain, there's some foundational belief, but that seems arbitrary, or there's some kind of circularity. So the skeptic wants to just remain skeptic, right? Because those posing issues. And the Clausewitz model takes one of the things in the triad, right, which is the infinitary chain, but it stipulates these conditions. So Klein actually provides a solution to that skeptical approach. And that's the reason why I may favor it over foundationalism and foundationalism and coherentism. Yeah, sorry, I gotta find the word. Yeah, coherentism. So yeah, the view still has reasons to be taken seriously. Just talking about some specific concern isn't really relevant to the view itself. Isn't actually showing that the view shouldn't be taken seriously. The view still does what it wants to do in the first place, right? Which is address this famous skeptical approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
foundationalism and coherentism yet don't do. They kind of just accept it in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, and just don't bring up. Actually, you know what? You can bring up that, but I'm more so just questioning infinitism. I'm not really being like a foundationalist or coherentist. But
yeah,
listen,
but wait, no, but that is really
yeah, I know. I said you can bring them up. I'm just specifying, right, for the recording. But anyways, just moving on to what I have to say in response. Yeah, I get that Klein has this sort of inquiry, but I'm saying even if that's not what the view is talking about, it doesn't matter because, any epistemological view should obviously account for how sound an argument is. And you bringing up that you have reasons to believe doesn't really matter because when we're referring back to soundness, we're talking about something that must necessarily follow. I think anyone would grant that if your view can't account for things necessarily following,
when you say soundness,
stop, then it's a problem. Now you can respond.
Okay, when you say soundness, you're talking eternally, right?
You said, am I talking internally?
Yeah.
What's meant by internal there?
Bro, just specifically relating to what's within the view. So for example, under foundationalism, right? A foundationalist would just say that this thing just ultimately leads back to this justified foundational belief, and that doesn't require any more justification than that. Now that thing has a credence of one, right? So that's what a foundationalist would say. But then obviously the skeptic would disagree. So soundness would be put into question under the foundationalist view. So when you're talking about soundness there, are you talking internally?
Yeah, I'm talking about given the view's method of justification.
Yeah, you're talking internally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a couple of things. Like these competing views are still problematic for the same reason that infinitism is not problematic. Two, just use specifically, use kind of just question begging here, just saying that these epistemological theories of justification have to have these certain norms for approaching soundness internally seems kind of silly. Because in a sense, the view still kind of does reach soundness eternally. It's just some kind of disastic soundness to the agent, at least, right? With respect to the agent's epistemic axis, the agent is disastically justified. In a way, the agent is sound under the view. Similarly, a foundationalist may be disastically justified, given that their belief regresses or falls back to some foundational belief. So the view still has some kind of internal soundness. It's just not the kind of internal soundness that you're looking for. Right, it's just not the case that the view will ultimately fall back on this one, foundational belief, or will circle back or something like that. So just because the view isn't capturing kind of soundness that you're interested in, doesn't mean that the view is some weird, silly epistemological theory justification that no one should take serious, because it still actually fulfills what it's looking to fill and actually does address a famous issue that these other theories fail to address. So the view actually does end up fulfilling its goals. So I don't really get what's going on here.
Okay, right. And to be clear, with the soundness thing, right? By doxastic soundness, you just mean, within the agent's epistemic access, that's fine.
Yeah, that's all it means. Hold
up, stop.
Bro, wait,
fine, right? No, that's fine, right?
Bro, this is like autism. Like,
within infinitism, you have to account for the regress premises. That's the whole.
No, you don't. No, your question begging.
About the regress premises. The regress premises.
No, your question
fucking posterior premises are gonna hinge on the prior premises, and you just keep pussyfooting. You keep dodging around this one. And listen, I don't know how it's question begging when both me and you would grant soundness is some normative thing for some epistemological framework.
Wait, no, that's not. See, this is why I want to interrupt you, bro. Sometimes interruptions.
I don't really care why you want to interrupt me. You're gonna let me finish, retard. Or I'm gonna do the same to you if you want to be uncharitable.
Right, this is just cringe. Okay, so if by soundness you mean that the view that it has to regress on some singular proposition, and it has to completely showcase that these competing hypotheses have a very the agent is sound in that sense. Now, just continuously repeating that I have to fill some standard that Klein's affinitous model isn't even interested in, isn't actually showing that this is some weak or poor epistemological theory or justification. That's just showing that you have an interest in different goals that this view isn't actually attempting to capture. So you're just question begging. Nothing new is really being stated here. If I was to end the conversation off here.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna let you weasel your way out from here. Never once have I uttered that's what account of soundness I'm taking. You've been shadowboxing this entire fucking time, and in fact, I've been fucking defining soundness. All I mean by soundness is something where the conclusion necessarily follows, right? So I don't know how you got me taking soundness to be hinging on one belief like a foundationalist would when I specified I'm not. Wait, stop. When I haven't been a foundationalist or a coherentist, I'm just putting in question coherentism, and I don't care if the view isn't interested in it, as long as what I'm talking about is a norm. Obviously, soundness is a norm, retard.
Wait, you're not tracking. Hide. I never.
Yeah, we can conclude here, right? You said you were fine.
Wait, I'm gonna look at you. Wait, no, because I just.
Okay, so he's gonna die.
Wait, let me talk.
Away.
Stop.
Right. So he's been shadowboxing for the entire fucking debate. He didn't even know what I meant by
you're like hacking right now.
Defined it throughout the entire conversation.
Bro, chill. Be normal.
And now
you're literally You're literally packing. Okay,
Listen, I would have to attack you if you didn't try to interrupt me. Then get mad when I do the same thing to you.
Bro. There's a difference between me interrupting to make a point and you just interrupting me to pack me. Like, what the fuck? Okay, all I'm gonna say now is, I never a single time said by soundness or talking about something hinging or something falling back on some foundational belief. All I said is that by soundness, I don't mean that there's 100% certainty, right? There's 100% certainty. First off, obviously under infinitism, there's going to be 100% certainty if some hypothesis actually fulfills, right? Unless we're talking about some kind of foundational infinitism. Or like, for example, I'm saying something like tautologies have a certainty of 1, and then by proxy, the hypothesis has certainty of 1, because under foundational infinitism, we take it to be the case that tautologies have a certainty of 1. So just talking about something that's incompatible with Klein's affinitous model isn't actually a critique to the view. The second thing, it's really all I really wanted to say. You just mistracked it, and I'm not interested in that kind of account of soundness, because obviously under Klein's affinitous model, the whole entire point is that no given proposition or no given chain of justification ultimately falls back on one single justification, right? It's an infinitely growing chain of justification. Right? So, right, like it's a potential infinite. So there's not really going to be one given proposition that it all falls back to. Now, you could say, like, maybe with respect to certain norms that we have, maybe if we value evidence to maybe value empirical evidence to a certain degree and whatnot, then you could say that some given hypothesis has a high credence, right? But again, right, like the numbers for these competing hypotheses can still be infinitesimally slow. It's just never going to be 0 or 100. So you're not really posing a critique to my view. You're kind of just like question begging and like talking to yourself.
That's the same guy who had me on local mute, by the way.
No, I never local muted. I just let me talk.
Myself.
I'll let you go now.
Shadowboxed again. You didn't understand what I meant by soundness, and then you go on about the same fucking rant. I already brung up why having good reason to believe doesn't mean anything when I'm talking about soundness, and I've already brought up why Klein not being interested with some normative thing under epistemology isn't fucking relevant. So, you know,